So there's been a lot of recent news in the animation space recently. Old shows have been ending, new shows have been beginning, but in particular, there's been a lot of cool stuff going on in the independent animation space. And it feels like we've been getting just news after news after news after news, and it's all making something that's been just real cool. And I want to just take a minute to discuss my thoughts on it and discuss a little bit of how we got to this point. First, how did we get here? I'm going to start our conversation with something you might not expect. That's right, I can pinpoint all of this on one person. It's that guy's fault! What?
Let's talk about the idea of culture versus counterculture. This is not unique to animation, but for almost as long as the animation industry has existed, there's been a small subgroup that seeks to rebel against what the regulars were doing. In the olden days, we had Disney animators making their lavish and dreamy cartoons, and then you had UPA who bucked these trends by making their very isometric, limited movement cartoons. Later, we had Disney, again, making their cartoons in the golden age, and then you had the upstart DreamWorks, whose original works were very much a rebuke of that Disney style.
I'll probably make a video about this eventually, but all you really need to know is that it never just happens on its own. It's never just, oh, someone woke up today and decided to be mad. I choose violence today.
While it's far from being the only part of the animation industry, film and television have been animation's bread and butter for years. The thing is, over the past few years, and especially with the rise of the internet, we've been seeing these traditional media garner less and less of the public's attention.
Now something else is vying for everyone's attention, but especially for children's attention. YouTubers, streamers, social media, whatever the hell this is. Point is, children are doing anything except for watching traditional television animated shows.
I mean, the numbers do not lie here. A decade ago, you could expect a show like, say, Gravity Falls to pull in around 3 to 4 million on average for its first season and 1 to 2 million on average for its second season. But for a show like The Owl House, which had a similar audience on the same network, a typical episode would only get maybe around 400,000 to 600,000 viewers on average. And of course, other sources like streaming are typically included in these numbers, but that's still a noticeable decline in viewership. But here's the lie in what I just said. Those two audiences are not the same, because a 6 to 11-year-old in 2012 was not the same as a 6 to 11-year-old in 2022, because of the things we just mentioned before. And we haven't even talked about a lot of the other issues in the industry, like, and also. Now, I could talk all day about independent animators and film showing in singular theaters in the middle of nowhere, but we've got to start somewhere. And the rise of the internet is plenty far, and realistically is all we really need for our discussion today. Now, like most internet history, and folk history in general, it's very poorly documented, if at all. So this is mostly just gonna be a superficial overview from my basic understanding and memory of it all. The beginning of animation on the internet really started with individual artists putting their work online for a uniquely online audience, back when the internet was just a niche thing nerds did and not something responsible for your entire self-worth. And we had Flash animators and people posting stuff to websites like Newgrounds, but these people were mostly just doing it for fun. There wasn't any money to be had here. But as the internet grew bigger and bigger, and more people started using it as a part of their daily lives, soon enough, there grew to be an online community of animators and animation enthusiasts. Some of them collaborated on some smaller scale projects, and then those became larger scale projects, and these ended up getting audiences of their own. And nowadays we have teams like Spindlehorse, creators of Has Been Hotel, and Glitch, creators of The Amazing Digital Circus, operating much like professional studios, making full-fledged shows primarily for internet audiences with professional level talent and artists behind these projects.
But surely it's not that popular, right? I mean, the internet is everywhere nowadays, but the amount of people in these online communities is always small, and that's especially true for animated communities. And we've already seen the need for these long-form shows has been declining in recent years because they just don't have the attention for it. So surely...
Oh.
Hello, John Statistics here, and I'm here to tell you exactly what these numbers mean. Yeah, that's a big number. Get the hell out of my house! Okay, yeah. The popularity is there, the talent is there, and the shows are fun. But there's one problem we haven't talked about yet. Namely, I can't pay my rent with this.
Yes, money is very important.
So insightful.
The fact of the matter is, it's always hard to get your project off the ground on YouTube because viewership just does not translate to revenue in the same way that television ratings or movie theater ticket sales do. Now, YouTube has never been a great place to make your money, but it is especially bad for animators. Rewarding consistent and timely content really hurts when you spend 5 working days a week animating children saying swear words. So these creators have found alternative ways to make their money. Merchandise, donations, and recently we've been seeing these shows interacting with the traditional studio network system in very interesting ways, like for licensing deals. Has-Been Hotel is airing on Amazon Prime and Digital Circus is on Netflix. And I imagine they made a decent money from that, but the more importantly is that they got their shows in front of a more general audience, which that might be the more important thing at the end of the day. And notably, we've been seeing a lot of traditional studio network talent making their stuff in the indie space, or at the very least not at those traditional studios anymore. People like Dana Terrace, who did a lot of great work for Disney, but eventually left and is now making a new show for Glitch. And Matt Braley, who, after his film idea was cancelled at Sony Pictures, went on to found his own indie studio. We've seen the trends for the networks and the studios over the past few years. We've seen the trends for the animation industry. And if this independent animation space wants to turn into something, then it's going to start with the talent coming over and a little bit of cooperation from traditional spaces like licensing or branding.
However, the advantage of that and being indie is that they're not fully reliant on the networks. They have their own team. They can make their own decisions. And who knows, maybe we are on the verge of a so-called indie animation industry. But I've always had problems with that term. Namely, it is inherently a misnomer. You can't be independent and also an industry. Let's circle back to our discussion about culture and counterculture. We see time and time again that if a countercultural movement has any legs or any motion to it, it'll just incorporate itself into the culture in some meaningful way that it just becomes part of the culture. The traditional studio and animation space for making animated shows is not going away. But this new indie animation space, it's not going away either. So you could see a future in, say, 10 or 15 years where you have this whole community of independent animation studios and they make their own projects for their own audiences, but then they collaborate with the bigger networks to create licensing deals. These studios will have their own projects, their own staffs, and have full creative and legal control over their work. And who knows, maybe we'll see a bunch more studios pop up with full audiences and a lot of popularity over the next few years that could eventually lead to an outcome like this. But only time will tell. That's all I really wanted to talk about today. I hope to make some more videos about some more specific topics that I've really wanted to talk about for a while now. So, till then, thanks for watching.